Welcome back to another episode of The Emily Show. This week, we have to talk about the trial of Alec Baldwin because when this goes live, it will be underway. Jury selection happened in just a day in New Mexico on Tuesday, July 9th, and opening statements are going to start Wednesday, July 10th. The judges set aside about 10 days for this trial, and it looks like they're planning 8 or 9 days of testimony. And then how long the jury deliberates will be up to them. The Halyna Gutierrez jury didn't deliberate very long at all, just a few hours. So today we're going to talk about, well, what we need to know for the Baldwin trial. What does the prosecution have to prove? What happened in their full day of pretrial motions? Remember, I said the defense was going to try to bury the prosecution in paper. There was so much litigation running up to this trial, up into the point that the judge at one point was looking at the lawyers going, it sounds like you're just asking for a continuance. Because if you want all this done and trial starts tomorrow, what do you want me to do? So lots of litigation, but this trial is underway on the first trial setting. Well, kind of the first trial setting because it really is the second time he's been indicted on this, but the first trial setting on the second indictment because he didn't waive time. And so if it feels like this trial has moved kind of fast, it has. So today, overview of how we got here and the road so far a little bit, a look at some of those really important pretrial motions and moments where the defense was like, oh God, what have we gotten ourselves into? Some of the wins for the defense, some of the wins for the prosecution, and again, what they have to prove to the jury when it comes down to, is Alec Baldwin guilty of involuntary manslaughter? We've already seen Halyna Gutierrez, the Rust armorer, sentenced to the maximum sentence in this case of 18 months. Unflinchingly, for those of you that watched it with me over on YouTube, unflinching was the judge when she sentenced Halyna Gutierrez to 18 months. But this is a very different case, and this will be, though some similar witnesses, a very, very different trial. And with that, we should just get into it. We've got a lot to talk about today. How long will this podcast be? I don't know. It depends. It just really depends. So buckle up. Let's talk Baldwin. Welcome to The Emily Show. I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst and big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years. I'm a former prosecutor, and I break down the legal side of pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. We should just get into it. Let's go. A huge thank you to today's sponsor, Green Chef. Are you ready to get that farmer's market fresh food delivered right to your door and take the stress out of making meals? Because, well, your Green Chef meals come with all the ingredients you need to make a meal and really easy to follow instructions that include pictures, which I love. So you're bringing those summer farmer's market vibes home with pre-portioned and prepped quality whole foods and chef designed recipes. You can choose from over 80 different menu items each week. Our family relies on Green Chef, and especially when I'm in trial, I will add in things like a breakfast charcuterie board or an easy to make breakfast or lunch. So if you're ready to find out for yourself why Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating well, now is the time. Go to greenchef.com/EmilyBaker50 and use code EmilyBaker50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's greenchef.com/EmilyBaker50 and use promo code EmilyBaker50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. Let's get back to today's episode. For a quick road so far, Alec Baldwin is being tried for the involuntary manslaughter for the shooting death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins on the movie set of Rust in New Mexico on October 21st, 2021. When Alec Baldwin shot and killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins, director Joel Souza was also injured. We saw him testify at Halyna Gutierrez's trial, and we saw him give a statement during victim impact statements, and you could tell that this entire incident and the trials and litigation that has come is still very impactful to him. But do I think we'll see him in New Mexico testifying again? I absolutely think that we will. Since the shooting, there has been a ton of civil litigation against Alec Baldwin personally, civil litigation against him and against the armorer Hannah Gutierrez against Rust Movie Productions, against all of the members of production. There was a wrongful death lawsuit that was resolved, and as part of that resolution in the wrongful death lawsuit, Halyna Hutchins' husband became a producer of Rust when the movie was finished filming. So this movie has been finished, which was wild to me. It still feels wild to me that this movie finished being filmed, not in New Mexico, but that this movie finished being filmed in between the time that this shooting happened and Alec Baldwin being recharged. Remember, Baldwin was originally indicted and then the indictment was dismissed. We've heard a ton about that in other litigation. The defense attorneys arguing that this was gamesmanship or something by the prosecution. The prosecution arguing that the defense asked them to dismiss it while they were waiting on FBI reports and they acquiesced, and this was them being kind to the defense. The defense and prosecution have absolutely no love lost in this case. And it actually seems that there's been a bit more sniping between them than there was in the trial of Hannah Gutierrez. And remember, in the Hannah Gutierrez trial, the attorneys were just yelling over each other, and the judge was sitting there with like her face in her hand saying, "I let you have coffee. I will take away the coffee." And I'm like, she's going to put these lawyers on like a behavior star chart before the end of this trial. And oh, don't worry, we're going to talk about the lawyer behavior. But these lawyers have definitely had strong words for each other leading up to trial. The prosecutor in this case doesn't say what, if anything, very often, which is thankful, but there are definitely times where her demeanor and tone is so incredibly condescending. And I think that it is going to ruffle Alec Baldwin's feathers to sit in court and be condescended to. I also think it might be a very solid strategy on the part of the prosecution because remember what they have to prove, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute, but what they have to prove here is involuntary manslaughter. It is recklessness. It is action without due caution and circumscription. How better to show that Alec Baldwin maybe lacks caution than to have him testify and perhaps respond in a less than positive way to cross examination by the prosecutor. So, in some of the back and forth of litigation leading up to this, I think that the prosecution is not just trying their case, but also playing to the defendant to see if he takes the bait and testifies. He has an absolute right to not testify. He should exercise that right to not testify. But the prosecution's going to play his police interview and they're going to talk about him in opening statement and they're going to make him out to look like the worst version of himself. And I think he's going to hate having to sit there in the courtroom and not be able to say anything. It's not an easy thing to do. And Baldwin's personality, based on what we've seen in the public, seems to be that wanting to respond is a strong need for him, which is why we saw him do the George Stephanopoulos interview, that strange roadside interview, and others when this had just happened. They're going to talk about Baldwin not going to the gun safety training, but then in his interview with law enforcement, talking about how he is the most gun expertiest gun expert to ever gun expert on a movie set. He knows the difference between a dummy and a blank and a live round, and he knows all of the things. So, will Alec Baldwin testify is going to be one of the biggest questions in this case. Do I think he should? No. Do I think he may? Possibly. But I think that the speaking that he's going to do is through that police interview. And then we'll see if the prosecutors choose to use any of that George Stephanopoulos interview. Because the George Stephanopoulos interview, he says that he doesn't pull the trigger emphatically, repeatedly. I broke that down on another episode of the podcast. But if the prosecution plays it, then his story, his "I never pulled the trigger" gets in. But if they don't play it, then we don't have as many conflicting stories of his. And if I'm the prosecution, I think pushing him to have to testify, not putting in those potentially beneficial statements, is going to be what they keep their eye on. But we'll see what they choose to do because there's also a lot of other factors to that. So let's talk about what the prosecution has to prove. Again, This is a case for involuntary manslaughter. I've broken this down more in other content and talking about this case, but I am going to pull up the indictment again and we're going to take a look at it real quick together to just go over the two different theories. Just like in the Hannah Gutierrez case, there are two theories of involuntary manslaughter under the law in New Mexico. So there are two different ways to get there. Unlike the Hannah Gutierrez case, this is a very different circumstance because Baldwin is not the armorer. Hannah Gutierrez's job was a huge factor in not just why she was prosecuted, but in how the laws played out. Here, we're looking at Alec Baldwin as an actor, not as somebody who's responsible for checking the weapon. And some of you might say, Emily, he was also a producer on the film. Yes, yes, but the prosecution's not going to be allowed to get into that. And we're going to talk about that when we get into the final pretrial motions that were heard in court on Monday. Under the law in New Mexico, you can have two theories for involuntary manslaughter. So we're going to take a look at that real quick and what the two theories are. Remember, Alec Baldwin is being held responsible on a personal level. The court has ruled out any discussion of him as a producer on the movie. So any negligence in hiring of Hannah Gutierrez or anything like that is not going to be coming in. So let's take a look at this indictment real quick. And we will look at the two theories that they are going to be presenting to the court against Alec Baldwin, and which we're going to talk about which one I think might be stronger if they make a clean case for it. The grand jury charges count one, involuntary manslaughter, negligent use of a firearm, or in the alternative, count one, involuntary manslaughter without due caution or circumscription. These are the two different ways they can find Alec Baldwin guilty of involuntary manslaughter: negligent use of a firearm or without due caution and circumscription. That ends up being the recklessness or the criminal negligence one that we're looking at. And we're going to take a look real quick at the jury instructions with regard to this so that you get a sense for what the prosecution has to prove. And remember, because these are alternate theories, the jury does not have to be unanimous on the theory. They have to be unanimous in holding Baldwin responsible, but you can have 6 of one and 6 of the other. So I think the strongest argument here is going to be the negligent use of a firearm. From everything we saw come out in the Hannah Gutierrez case and from everything we've seen from the video clips of Alec Baldwin in the church, the prosecution is going to argue that pointing the weapon directly at Halyna Hutchins and pulling the trigger is negligent use of a firearm. And they're going to have to overcome the fact that on a film set, where are the boundaries of when you're allowed to point a weapon in someone's direction? Because the experts for the prosecution are going to say that you never point a weapon directly at someone. There's always little cheats so that it might look like it's right at the camera, but it's not. Or if it is right at the camera, it's completely empty or what have you. We're going to hear all of those different takes from the prosecution experts on why you don't point a weapon directly at someone. And what we're going to hear from the defense experts, I expect, is that not only was Baldwin doing his job as an actor, he relied on the professionals on set to do their job. And they're going to argue that the job of the other professionals on set actually intervene with his liability here so that he's not going to be, or they're going to argue shouldn't be found guilty because there are intervening causes here. And those intervening causes are Hannah Gutierrez's failure to do her job. So because she didn't do her job and because other safety professionals failed, he couldn't do his job as an actor, but the safety wasn't his responsibility. So the prosecution's really going to have to focus on his handling of the weapon there and not as much on him checking the weapon there. So when we take a look at the jury instructions, these are the state's proposed jury instructions. These are coming from the model jury instructions. We can call them MUJI if we like to, from the model jury instructions. This is how it's going to be broken down to the jury. This is not the verdict form, but this is the proposed jury instructions. The final language will be close to this. It was close to this in Hannah's case. The jury instruction reads, for you to find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter, the state must prove to your satisfaction beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements: that defendant Alec Baldwin Alexander Baldwin, endangered the safety of another by handling or using a firearm in a reckless manner. The defendant should have known of the danger involved by his actions. The defendant acted with a willful disregard for the safety of others. His actions caused the death of Halyna Hutchins, and that this happened in New Mexico on or about the 21st day of October. I think the argument for handling the weapon in a negligent manner and knowing of the danger involved is going to be some of the state's strongest arguments. But they're going to also argue, the defense will also argue, that the actions of the armorer means he couldn't know of the danger involved. He would have never thought that there would be a live round in a weapon. So, how should he have known? And this is going to be a fight over whether or not this set was dangerous leading up to this shooting, whether he had reason to know that the armorer wasn't doing her job or not. So, should he have known? And was he acting with a disregard to the safety of others when he didn't know the gun was loaded and when they were blocking out a scene? Could he have used a replica gun? Did he even need to be drawing the gun? Should he ever be drawing the gun when the armorer's not within the church? These are all questions that the jury's going to have to answer. The next instruction goes more to that due caution and circumscription element or alternative to this charge. And it says the same thing. For you to find the defendant guilty, the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that defendant Baldwin fired a gun. And it says Alexander Baldwin in all of these. I'm now explaining why I'm shortening it to make it shorter and thus making it longer, but you know what I mean. The defendant fired a gun at Halyna Hutchins. The defendant should have known of the danger involved by his actions. The defendant acted with a willful disregard for the safety of others. The acts caused the death of Halyna Hutchins. It happened in New Mexico on or about the 21st of October. So again, firing the gun is going to go without the due caution or circumscription. And these go to that different alternatives of involuntary manslaughter in New Mexico. So should he have known of the danger involved? And that's really where this fight for the defense is going to be. If you're an actor on set and you're handed a gun and everyone tells you the gun is clear, should you have known that it could still be dangerous? And the prosecution's going to argue, why do you have safety meetings every morning? Why do you do gun safety training? Why are there a million fucking rules about gun safety on set? Because you know that it can be dangerous. And he knew that it could be dangerous. And you know that even if weapons are checked, they can be dangerous. There was much talk about the movie The Crow in the pretrial motions to not bring it up. But once the defense starts bringing up whether or not Baldwin knew it was dangerous, it might start opening into some of those arguments of we know that weapons can be dangerous even if they aren't loaded with a bullet. So it's going to be interesting to see how they argue that. The defense, again, is also going to have that really favorable instruction of the intervening cause. If you find that there is an intervening cause that interceded there, it can kind of block Alec Baldwin's guilt in this case. So were the actions of Hannah Gutierrez enough to be an intervening cause here? Because if Hannah Gutierrez doesn't load a live round, does this happen? But if Alec Baldwin doesn't pull the trigger, does this happen? And that's really the fight in this trial. Thank you to today's sponsor, Policygenius. Life is unexpected. And today's episode, we're talking about loss. And one of the things you can do to start to prepare for any unexpected event is making sure that your life insurance is taken care of. And I know this is one of those adulting tasks that can feel daunting and overwhelming, and like you just don't want to do it, or you think you're covered through your employer, but maybe you want to switch jobs and you want to make sure that you have enough for your family no matter what might happen. Policygenius works for you, not the insurance companies. And that's probably why they have so many 5-star ratings on Google and Trustpilot. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. So if you're ready to find the right life insurance for you, you can get started today with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link down below to get the free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com. Let's get back to today's episode. Speaking of Hannah Gutierrez, I covered a motion from the prosecution to essentially ask the court to give Hannah Gutierrez immunity so that she can be made to testify. Her case is up on appeal. She has a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. She can't be forced to testify. She can be called to testify, but she can't be forced to testify against her own self-interest. So the judge denying that motion seemed to cut off the possibility that we were going to see Hannah Gutierrez testify in this case. Could the prosecution still offer her immunity? Could there still be an immunity agreement down the road? It seems not. It seems that this would all be too late. However, interestingly enough, on July 3rd, the prosecution ordered Hannah Gutierrez be transported to local custody so she would be available. So let's take a look at this order to transport. I thought this was incredibly interesting. This is from, again, July 3rd from the prosecution. This matter coming before the court upon an oral motion of the special prosecutor for a transport order. It's ordered that the Department of Corrections release Hannah Gutierrez into the care and custody of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office on July 13th so that she may be transported by Santa Fe County Sheriffs to the Western New Mexico Correctional Facility. It's further ordered that the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office transport Hannah Gutierrez from Santa Fe Adult Correctional Facility to the First Judicial District Courthouse to provide testimony in the jury trial for the above-named cause, Alec Baldwin. Finally, it's ordered that the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office transport Hannah Gutierrez from the Adult Correctional Facility to Western New Mexico Correction Facility on July 19th and release her into the care and custody of the Department of Corrections. So they think that they're going to potentially call Hannah Gutierrez on July 13th and have had an order made to transport her out of custody for the potential of her testimony without an immunity deal. So what are they going to do? Just call her to the stand and have her plead the fifth over and over? This is going to be fascinating. Put the date in your calendar. Just put a date in your calendar. Put a date in your calendar for July 13th because they are transporting her to court. I am going to be fascinated to see how this goes. I don't know if it will go well. I don't know if they'll even call her, but they have to transport her. See, when I record these with our members in our members only, they point out helpful things like July 13th is a Saturday. July 13th is a Saturday. Not only is it a Saturday, it's the play at home Pokemon Go Fest. So yes, it's a Saturday, but they are transporting her in preparation for testimony and they asked to transport her to the courthouse. So I guess we'll see if they transport her to the courthouse, Monday the 15th? Because they'll be in trial on Monday the 15th. So they are moving her maybe to testify Monday the 15th. I guess you'll have to stay tuned. This is a good time to remind you that all of our live streams will be posted in the Law Nerd app at lawnerdapp.com or in your favorite app store so that if she does testify, we can send out our notifications as we are working on our notification system so that you can know when the stuff you want to see goes down. So will Hannah Gutierrez testify? Will she plead the fifth? Will she say her name? Will she not say anything? Will she say, "Good morning, Miss Gutierrez. Hey, bitch." Like, what's going to happen? I don't know. But they're transporting her and we'll get to see it live. And because of Hannah Gutierrez, the next thing happens in court. So what we're going to do is go to Monday, July 8th and take a look at what happened in court. There were lots of motions in limine. There were lots of pretrial things to be resolved. You could see by the end of the day, Judge Summer was getting a little frustrated with all of the parties. And remember, these pretrial hearings have been increasingly contentious and vitriolic, and the attorneys have been accusing each other of misconduct and what have you. So the defense files this motion to prevent prosecutorial misconduct. And they're like, Your Honor, the prosecutors wilded out It's a summary legal term. The prosecutors wilded out in the Halyna Gutierrez case, and we don't want that to happen in this case. So could you rein this shit in? So as the defense is making this motion about the prosecution like just doing shit, and sometimes they absolutely did, and Bowles didn't object to most of it. So the defense has tried to rein in what they saw in the Gutierrez case, and part of that was trying to rein in the prosecutors from potentially burden shifting. At one point, the defense attorney says, Your Honor, the prosecution was just like coaching witnesses from their seat. They're just saying, I order her to read the whole thing. That absolutely happened. That absolutely happened. And at the end of the defense asking the court for this motion, the court makes very clear that she does not favor this motion and then makes a ruling the defense is not only surprised by, but very unhappy with. So we're going to go to court real quick and take a look. For those of you listening on audio only, you're going to hear the defense attorneys, the prosecutor, and the judge in this, and a little bit, Emily, you say a little bit of commentary from me. So let's go to court to find out what's going to be happening for objections during this trial. She didn't take their coffee away, but she did take their objections away. Kind of. So we are getting into the defense explaining to the court why they want to rein in this case after watching essentially the Halyna Gutierrez trial that we all watched together. And this is that exchange when they get what they ask for, but not in the way they asked for it. So be careful what you wish for.
Talked about in this question, and she began interrupting the proceedings. So I didn't know how to address this. I don't know how to address this, even as I stand before Your Honor. But my request would be objection, relevance, objection, hearsay, and nothing else.
Right, so no speaking
objections. And in the
objections.
very rare circumstance when an issue rises to the level of extreme importance or constitutional imprint, a lawyer can approach. If there's something very complicated, a lawyer can approach. But otherwise, none of those tactics and devices should be used at this trial. We've come a long way to get here. The court has been very patient. All that we want is a fair trial. And for the rest of this, I would rely on my papers. Thank you.
Response.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And now the court, the prosecution is going to respond, and this is the second
Your Honor,
special
I think
prosecutor.
we can agree on one thing. Absolutely, without a doubt, and that's beyond dispute, the state has the burden. And the state cannot shift that burden to the
Which the
defendant.
defense had argued
Absolutely
about.
agree. However,
So as the new prosecutor explains to the court, look, we're not going to shift the burden. There are some moments where we are allowed to address things or point out that the defense said they were going to show things that they didn't show. That's what she starts talking about. And then the judge rules.
Well, I have to say, I don't like these kind of motions because I'm not going to be bound by it during trial where someone shows me an order and says, this is what I said. I was going to tell you, but I'll tell you now, based upon the ruling, every time you want to say something that is not a question to your witness, you're going to come up to the bench.
Oh, look at his
So,
face.
you
Look
do
at their
not get to
faces.
say,
The defense team.
objection.
The defense team is like, what? Because the judge is laying out that every time they want to object, they have to approach the bench.
And blah, 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 and then wait for me to say to come up. You're going to come up. And this happened in the Halyna Gutierrez trial.
Oh, they're so mad.
So,
Yeah, just point of clarification. I don't have any intention of approaching during the trial other than the rarest of circumstances.
no. You have to come up to the bench and put
He said, the lead attorney for Baldwin says, I have no intention of approaching. And she's like, oh, no. You will approach for literally everything.
on the record your objection. You don't get to do it from there.
He's
Okay,
buffering
I have
in court.
to internalize this. I've never had a trial conducted that way, so I would ask to potentially address this issue. I mean, I don't think the defense or anything that I've done would necessitate changing the rules. At least I would ask the.
This is, a court can do what they want with respect to objections, and this is what I'm going to rule. So I'm trying to, the the sides have been contentious with one another. I think that you all may not intend to, but you might want to try to get the jury to see what's wrong with that question, and or make some argument to try to influence the jury. And if you're going to object, it's going to be up here, and you're going to put on the record what the objection is, and I'll make a ruling up here.
The defense is like,
Approach for just a second.
the defense is like, this is not what we asked for. This is not what we asked for. This is, oh God, this is not what we asked for. He's like, danger, danger, danger. They asked for no speaking objections. They asked for objection grounds. That's it. And she's like, no, you're not going to do speaking objections, but in a different sense of the word, in that you're not going to speak. You're going to come to the bench and you are going to put on the record at the bench the grounds for the objection. You are not going to state it in front of the jury, which I kind of hate. But this happened towards the end of the Halyna Gutierrez trial. And it just makes me wonder how long it's been since this judge had been in trial, because the courtroom got a bit out of control in the Halyna Gutierrez trial. And this judge is like, what we're not doing is any of this. I'm waiting for the court to give them like a gold star chart, truly a behavioral chart. So now the defense attorney is approaching the microphone to continue to say that he is not happy with this ruling at all.
So I'm glad I saved my rebuttal because I do want to address this issue, Your Honor. What I would ask and urge the court, because I think that this system could disrupt the ability to cross-examine and it disrupt the defense. It is not, as I think the court will acknowledge, it is true, the court has great discretion. I think that deciding that before the trial even begins is an extreme use of discretion, just genuinely. I know that issue happened at the prior trial. I'm asking and urging the court to give an opportunity at least.
Sir, you made a motion talking about what the prosecutor was doing at the prior trial. And the judge is like, I got you. I got you. No objections unless you're at sidebar.
To the defense to just simply say, and I think my suggestion works, right? It's just objection relevance. There's no other words coming out of my mouth ever during objections at a trial in front of the jury, and to allow us to have an opportunity to have what I would call a normal procedure. Because if every time there's any progress going on with a witness, they're standing up and they're making everybody come to the bench, they're disrupting the ability to cross-examine. They're disrupting the ability to put on our case.
It's your motion.
So what I would urge the court and ask the court to please do is to allow us at least, if after the first witness even, the court wants to revert to what they did later on in the Halyna Gutierrez retrial. But I can tell the court I've tried many, many cases. I've never had that issue before. I've never had that issue with one witness in one case. So I'm asking the court to at least give the parties a chance to do it. I also am very concerned about the time, schedule, and everything else. There are lots of objections that are just objection relevance. The court will rule. If the court needs to hear more, we come up. And I'm urging, almost begging the court to at least let us start that way, and then the court can,
He's
like this, and not hear from me
pleading at this
further on this
point.
issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the court's like, yeah, no.
I'm not going to change my mind. I can see, what I want to do is I want to start
His face,
with
the
you all getting
the devastation. He's like, just, you can see him just go, fuck. And I get it. I hate this too. I hate this for me. I would hate this if I was one of the trial attorneys. I also hate it. But y'all have gotten off the rails with each other, and this judge isn't having it. She's not having it. She's not having it at all. But he is just like, no. You can just see internally he's screaming, are you fucking kidding me?
lay of the land. And I'm going to be in control of the courtroom.
I'm in charge now,
This is what I'm
Phasma.
going to do. I'm sorry that you haven't experienced this, because it can happen, and it does happen.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do. If you all seem to be doing well, and you get it, and I'm hearing relevant.
If you all seem to be doing well. Star chart. Children, 5 gold stars on each side. And then maybe I will give you back your objections in court. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Since I agree, then we can perhaps relax the rule. But that's how it's going to start off. Okay?
But do you have coffee?
All right.
But are they allowed coffee? So Remember how annoyed the judge was in the Hannah Gutierrez Reed case as the attorneys were just completely flouting all types of courtroom procedure, policy, and decorum. That's not going to happen in this case, and these parties have been contentious. So I'm not surprised that the judge started out with no speaking objections, which would be explaining more than the objection in the grounds. I'm surprised that you're not allowed to state the objection even without the grounds and then approach, but she said, no, you're going to have to approach. I think what we will see in practice is they'll say objection and then approach and put the grounds on the record at sidebar, but they're going to be going up to sidebar a lot with this ruling. Speaking of this ruling that the defense is not happy with, we're going to go to another ruling that I think the defense is probably thrilled with, and that's the fact that Alec Baldwin's role as a producer will not be brought up in this trial. So let's hear what the judge has to say about that real quick.
Visit the producer. I'm going to make the following finding. I'm having real difficulty with the state's position that they want to show that as a producer, he didn't follow guidelines, and therefore, as an actor, Mr. Baldwin did all these things wrong, resulting in the death of Halyna Hutchins, because as a producer, he allowed this all to happen. I think that when you look at the relevancy, I think that one of the reasons why I think I'm having a hard time wrapping my hand around it, to be able to say, Mr. Baldwin, because he was a producer and he was the boss, although there are more than one producer, and he couldn't do anything without looking at those contracts. He couldn't do a thing without running it by, including hiring somebody, without running it by whatever that entity is in the contract. But I do not believe that it has any tendency to make more probable than it would be without the fact that Mr. Baldwin individually as an actor committed involuntary manslaughter through negligent use of a deadly weapon and the alternative theory.
This is a very big win for the defense, that his role as a producer is really, what the judge is saying, is not relevant. It doesn't tend to make it more probative than prejudicial, is what she's getting to, that that Baldwin, the actor, on October 21st holding the weapon, was negligent or reckless with the weapon, that he was using a firearm in an unsafe way, that he negligently handled a firearm. His role as a producer doesn't help a jury determine that fact. That doesn't mean it won't come up, because if the defense starts cross-examining the witnesses about their civil lawsuits, because some of them are suing Baldwin personally, and they're allowed to bring that up on cross-examination, but if they bring up those civil lawsuits, I can see a world where it's like, well, why are you suing Alec Baldwin? Well, he's one of the producers. So I can see it coming in, but I can also see where the judge's ruling is keeping the prosecution from arguing that his role as a producer makes him guilty here in some way, that his hiring was negligent, and not being able to get into evidence that shows as a producer that somehow he's more in control of the set. So it's going to cut off that line of questioning. Might the jury learn that he's a producer through questioning? They may. But is the prosecution allowed to argue him being a producer makes him more responsible and somehow proves their case? No, they're not going to be able to do that.
The probative value is not substantially outweighed by unfair prejudice and certainly confusion of issues to the jury. So I'm denying evidence of his status as a producer.
And that is something the defense is going to be quite happy with. They also limited the video that's allowed to be used of Baldwin. In the Halyna Gutierrez trial, we saw video of Baldwin doing all kinds of things, also rushing people along. Some of those videos are not going to be allowed to be shown at this point. Again, trials are dynamic and things can change that. They will be showing some of the videos of him firing the weapon after cut is yelled and stuff like that. But of him cursing on set, no, they're not going to be able to show some of those. They can't just seek to show that Alec Baldwin is a giant dickhead and therefore he should be found guilty. That type of evidence won't be allowed in. Him being unsafe with weapons on set, that goes directly to the issue about whether he handled this weapon on this day in a negligent way, whether he acted without due caution and circumscription. But just showing that Baldwin's kind of a jerk is improper evidence and is not allowed. So that type of character evidence won't come in unless something else happens. Of course, if Baldwin testifies that he's the chillest dude in the world, that he's never said a crossword to anybody, that he's super calm, yeah, it's going to open a door for a whole bunch of shit. Can I imagine him saying that? No. But right now, as it stands, the video the prosecution will show in their case in chief has been limited by the court's rulings. The defense did a very good job of taking a look at what happened in the Hannah Gutierrez Reed trial and going after what the prosecution did, including going after the fact that the prosecution regularly used witnesses and almost expanded their scope and asked them about all kinds of stuff. Bowles never objected. That's going to be curtailed too. Taking civilian witnesses or lay witnesses and asking them for almost expert opinion is not going to happen in this trial. I think we're going to see a lot more objections than we did in the last trial. And we're going to see those witness testimonies get narrowed down just because the defense attorneys know exactly what the prosecution's going to try. Most attorneys don't get the opportunity to watch a preview of their own trial with a lot of the same witnesses. So remember, Baldwin's team has the opportunity to look at what was said in the grand jury in this case, in the previous trial in this case, in any police interviews. They have a lot more information than even Hannah's team had going into trial because they got to watch the entire thing. That puts them at an unusual and tremendous advantage. So with all of that, and as I said at the beginning, the jury has been selected. There are 11 women and 5 men. The alternates will be identified later before the jury goes in to deliberate. They've given a 10-day estimate. Of course, that doesn't always include time for deliberation. And we will be starting Wednesday morning, July 10th with opening statements and then directly into evidence. And I imagine we will see a similar opening statement from Carrie Morrissey that we saw. And we will see who Alec Baldwin's lead counsel is. It seems that it's Alex Spiro. I keep wanting to say Spyro. It's just going to be some combination of the both. Emily, this is not a video game. Maybe it is. But what we're not going to talk about is high top tables, the waterfall, and whether or not it was snowing. And that will be an interesting break for all of us. So we're going to get a take 2 of the Rust trial, but in a different way. So get ready to see a lot of the same witnesses we saw last time. A huge thank you to today's sponsor, Shopify, who not only hosts the Law Nerd Shop, but you'd be surprised at how many of the shops you love operate with Shopify. There's times I'm shopping online and I'll get the pop-up for Shopify Pay and I'm like, oh, another Shopify shop. I see you. And even though I know that Shopify powers like 10% of all e-commerce in the US, I'm still always delighted to see brands that I shop and love also powered by Shopify. And that's because Shopify is a global e-commerce platform that helps you grow no matter what stage of business you're in. Whether you're just taking your first orders or moving past 1 million orders, Shopify is there with their award-winning customer service to help you every step of the way. And you don't only have to sell your goods on Shopify. With Shopify Collective, you can curate products for your customers too. And Shopify helps turn browsers to buyers with a checkout that converts 36% better than other online platforms. You know why? Because it's easy. So if you are ready to find out how your business can grow with Shopify, now is a great time. Sign up for a $1 per month trial at shopify.com/lawnerd. Remember, that's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/lawnerd to grow your business now. And you're going to start hearing this sound soon. Let's get back to today's episode. And with that, thank you for being here. Say it with me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a law nerd. May your Wi-Fi be strong. May your toilet paper be plentiful. May your family be well. And may the odds be ever in your favor. Law Nerd, we are back in trial, so I will see you in the chat. It only feels appropriate that we're getting ready to
bring the jury.
I'll see you soon. You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com or search your app store for Law Nerd. And you can also follow me on social media at The Emily D. Baker. Remember, I stream on YouTube on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I recap all of that for you in quick bits on Monday. And of course, The Emily Show drops on Wednesdays. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.